What's going on, guys? This is Ryan with the RK Outpost, and one of the most frustrating parts about Disney Star Wars is when you see these garbage tier media sites, these trash journalists out there that continue to try to tear down George Lucas and his Star Wars in order to elevate Disney Star Wars, whether it be the sequel trilogy or, in some instances, The Mandalorian. And that's exactly what we have here. A trash journalist for a garbage site that is dogging on George Lucas about how he portrayed the Tusken Raiders, because evidently that's just wrong of him to do. And of course, we're going to look into all of this. Now, I should say that I archived this page because once I saw the headline, there was no way I was going to give this article any fucking clicks. So it is archived. I will put the archive link in the description of this video, but you can see the headline, why I archived it. The Mandalorian fixes George Lucas's Tusken Raider mistake. And we know with Disney Star Wars, something we're going to see continuing down the line, they're going to try to fix a lot of things from George Lucas. And just like what we saw with the sequel trilogy, where they ignored his request for what they do, his plans for the sequel trilogy, just like with that, anytime they stray farther away from George Lucas's path, it is a fucking mistake. But let's continue. George Lucas's Star Wars movies did so much for the franchise, but when it came to Tusken Raiders, it was all bad. The Mandalorian has fixed that. Yes, don't worry, The Mandalorian, we're fixing George Lucas's Star Wars, everyone, don't worry. Now, this is by Mansoor Mithaiwala. I don't know exactly how to say your name. I think that his name may have something to do with his take on this whole thing, but let's continue to read. George Lucas's depiction of the Tusken Raiders, aka Sand People, in the original and prequels was narrow-minded. Yes, old, white, narrow-minded people shouldn't be making Star Wars anymore, right? But now, The Mandalorian has fixed that mistake. Originally conceived as a one-off story, George Lucas presented a clear-cut storyline with his original Star Wars movies, and one that didn't require expansion of further elaboration, so he wanted to revisit the galaxy with sequels and eventually prequels. A good portion of The New Hope takes place on Tatooine, where the film gets most of its exposition out of the way. But it's also a location teeming with life and culture in certain areas, in spite of the world itself. In fact, the Tusken Raiders are among the first alien species we see. That's true, with Obi-Wan Kenobi explaining they're a violent species who move in single file to hide their numbers. Now, keep in mind, this is what Obi-Wan Kenobi has said. Obi-Wan Kenobi, who has lived in that desert for nearly 20 years, is saying this about the Sand People. Obi-Wan Kenobi, a Jedi, who you would think would get to know the Sand People fairly well if he lived among them for that long and survived them for that long. But no, Obi-Wan Kenobi doesn't know anything. Let's go with what we saw in The Mandalorian. George Lucas's Star Wars is trash, right? Screen rant? Much of what Lucas did with the Tuskens and A New Hope carried over to the prequels. Blah, 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 blah. Although they weren't around too much in the former, they played a small but significant role in Attack of the Clones, ultimately being one of the many reasons that led to Anakin's downfall. But if Star Wars portrayed Tusken Raiders like The Mandalorian has, perhaps things would have turned out differently. Yeah, that's the fucking point. If the Tusken Raiders were people who could be so easily bargained with, then they probably wouldn't be kidnapping random people, taking them back to their camps, and having them die there. That's the entire fucking point, that this is a different culture. This is a culture that is extremely violent, that is religious in a lot of ways. Religious, violent zealots that live in a desert. I understand now maybe why someone might not want to have anything to do with them. They might want them to be portrayed differently. Now it's starting to make sense, doesn't it? George Lucas made Tusken Raiders violent savages in A New Hope. Star Wars' continued success more than 4 decades since the original movie's release is owed to Lucas's wild imagination. But it's not like he spawned everything out of thin air. Lucas, like many filmmakers then and now, take inspiration from real-life people, cultures, and regions. And that's certainly applicable. Lucas has previously said the Bedouin people of North Africa and the Middle East heavily influenced the design, culture, and history of the Tuskens. And while it was great that he sought to bring some attention to the Arab world, he went about it all wrong. Again, let's direct you back to the name of the person who's writing the article, Mansoor Mithaiwala. I think now we might be understanding why he thinks that George Lucas did it all wrong, and now The Mandalorian is great. I think I understand. Lucas and Star Wars' depiction in the originals and prequels is quite degrading. The Tuskens are desert dwellers that have somehow managed to live in the desert for thousands of years without needing any sort of advanced technology to help them. And in fact, they hate technology. It's one of the reasons that it's so laughable that the Mandalorian handing them macro binoculars in season 1 wouldn't have resulted in them just immediately dying, because that's absolutely ludicrous. They don't like outsiders on their world using technology on their world. They even go out and do raids specifically to destroy moisture vaporators and things like that, technological things, because they think it's an affront to their religion, to their belief system, and what the life they're trying to live on Tatooine. But that's all changed now. When they're introduced by Obi-Wan, they're talked about like they're savages. In fact, the official Star Wars website still refers to them as fearsome desert savages to this day, and they're quickly dismissed as sand people. How dare they? It should be, what should you call them instead of sand people? They're literally people of the sand. Sand people. That's what that name comes from. A New Hope went to great lengths to show viewers that traveling outside of cities is dangerous, not because the animals, but because the sand people would come get them. Lucas's depiction made them out to be mindless barbarians who are incapable of even targeting a Jawa sandcrawler. Of course, you're being hyperbolic because what Obi-Wan said was that they couldn't have been that precise. Only Imperial stormtroopers are that precise. And of course, Imperial stormtroopers are using energy weapons. They're using blasters. What do sand people use? Despite what Din Djarin said, when he said they won't raise a blaster to you, that is garbage. Sand people don't use blasters. Tusken Raiders use projectile-based weapons. They're called slug throwers in Star Wars lore. I know maybe some of the people working on the show don't understand that, but that is why in the prequels, when you see them firing, in episode 1, you see them firing against Anakin's pod racer, you hear pting, right? That's why you hear that, because it is a projectile base, because they don't like technology, ladies and gentlemen. This is not hard to understand. This is not difficult, but evidently it can't be portrayed on screen very well. That's what we're finding out. That wasn't true, and unfortunately that line of thought continued beyond the original trilogy and the prequels. That wasn't true. This is what you're saying. You are saying that what George Lucas gave us in the original trilogy and the prequels isn't true. Do you understand what you're fucking saying? This is the man who wrote the lore. This is the man who decided what things were and what things weren't. There's a reason that the Tusken Raiders are portrayed the way they are. It leads, right? It makes you understand how difficult a life Tatooine is. And then in the prequels, it makes you understand this is one of the reasons that Anakin fell to the dark side, because of what these people did to his mother. There's a reason that they are portrayed like this. And by trying to retcon it now and making it feel a different way, now by trying to say that the Tuskens, oh, actually, they're just normal people, they're just misunderstood, that puts an entirely new perspective on everything that happened around there, doesn't it? And that's what you're trying to do in the media and from Disney Star Wars. And he continues to go on, just more talking about the prequels and how George Lucas made a mistake in demonizing the Tusken Raiders. How dare you demonize the Sand People? It's absolutely ludicrous that you're saying that the Mandalorian fixed George Lucas's mistakes with the Tusken Raiders. And he even goes on to say, listen to this, he even goes on to say something about the expanded universe. The Mandalorian Season 2 went far in refining the Tusken Raiders' culture, so much so that calling them Sand People can now only be considered derogatory. This is where it all leads, ladies and gentlemen. These fucking pussies, these fucking SJWs that try to infect everything are trying to tear down George Lucas. They're trying to tear down the movies he did. They're effectively calling the motherfucker racist. That is what they are doing right now in front of our very eyes. That's why we archive these things using the Wayback Machine. That's why I will not give articles like this clicks. I will share this in the description below. Again, for anyone that wants to read this trash for yourself and make fun of it. By doing this, The Mandalorian did what Lucas could not. It turned Tuskens into real people, not xenophobic savages who wouldn't let anyone near them or accept anyone into their ranks. In many ways, The Mandalorian brought what the expanded universe did with the Tuskens, exploring their history, humanity, and perspective into things. The expanded universe did a great job of exploring Tusken Raider lore and explaining why the Tuskens are the way that they are, and even giving you a little bit of sympathy for them, while at the same time staying true to George Lucas, what he saw, his vision, his story that he told. That's why the expanded universe, now called Legends, is so true to what George Lucas wanted for this universe. Specifically, if you want to learn about some Tusken lore, read this book, Kenobi, right here. Highly recommended. A little bit slow, but definitely a great book about the life of Obi-Wan post prequels and pre-original trilogy. Oh my god, I can't believe I almost said that. And also a lot of Tusken lore in there. Explains some of the reasons why the Tuskens don't like technology, why the Tuskens are the way that they are. But of course, no. They did it better in The Mandalorian so that they can make it another mystery how the Mandalorian can interact with the Tuskens. And of course, they're fixing George Lucas's mistake, according to these people. Let me know what you think about all this in the comments below. Smash a like button, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell for notifications, share this video out there, and I'll talk to you later. Thanks for watching, everyone. And a huge shout out to my patrons. I appreciate you guys so much. Want to follow me on Twitter or Instagram? Check out the description below. You'll find links to my P.O. box and my Patreon as well. And I'll talk to you guys later.